Can I ask for help? I have something hanging on my top eyelash in my eye. Can you see anything?
Katherine Siemionko worked in change management at Goldman Sachs till the 2016 election. Then she started organizing the New York Women's March on Facebook and eventually quit her job to run a nonprofit she created, the Women's March Alliance.
Thank you. All right, hello. I'm a little short there. Let me move that down. On Saturday, January 19th, Women's March Alliance will again host the third and only Women's March on New York City. We'll have female drum bands, female acrobats, women standing on women's shoulders, which can be just so beautiful.
This year, Katherine's not just struggling to figure out the logistics of a march. She's fighting a rival women's event for attendees.
So it's been a lot of confusion, and it's a bit unfortunate.
Both events claim to be the official event.
People have been coming to you saying, okay, I'm really confused. Which march should I go to?
So I think you're confusing our group with Women's March, Inc. We are Women's March Alliance.
But this is not a catfight over turf. It's a preview of a fight that will consume progressive politics in 2020.
I think our diversity here, and I think our inclusion of the Jewish community speaks for itself.
God bless you. Go in peace.
The rival event is hosted by Women's March, Inc., which runs the DC March. Of the nearly 350 independent marches nationwide, it's the biggest and most famous. In December, the Jewish magazine Tablet published allegations that leaders of Women's March, Inc. had made anti-Semitic comments. One had publicly praised Louis Farrakhan, the leader of the Nation of Islam, who's also an anti-Semite. Katherine's Women's March Alliance denounced anti-Semitism and made it very clear it's different from Women's March, Inc. But that's not why there are two events. The Farrakhan controversy pushed into public view a broader debate about intersectionality, the idea that there isn't a universal experience of being a woman, but that oppression based on race and gender and class interact to affect women differently. Historically, the women's movement has ignored women of color. And the only way to fix this, Women's March, Inc. argues, is to put women of color in charge.
We do know that white women deal with oppression, but we also know that they are part of upholding systems of oppression against people of color. And therefore, we need to make sure that those people who are most impacted are first.
There's this big debate right now over whether white feminists in particular haven't done enough work to help women of color achieve equal status.
I see that as a cop-out. The moment you say you're white, therefore you are racist. I can't say you're black, therefore you're, Latino, therefore. We are all one. We have to stop looking at each other as skin colors.
I think some would argue that if you don't talk about race, you don't talk about how some people are particularly targeted by their race. If you don't talk about African Americans being targeted by police, then there's no way to fix that.
There's a fine line between being racist and perpetuating stereotypes that are damaging to a race and talking about a legitimate issue. And I think we just need to be careful how we're walking along that line.
Keys, wallet, phone. Do I have my keys? I have keys, yeah. I have everything I need. Okay. We're gonna be successful. It's gonna be great.
In a way, Katherine offers another kind of representation. She's a conservative Christian from Tampa. Her family voted for Trump. The Me Too movement made her think about how misogyny had affected her personally.
My mother, when Me Too started, she said, those are just a bunch of sluts that have regret.
Wow.
I was like, wow. They put themselves out there. I was like, Mom, so when I was raped, that was my fault? Well, I don't think you were really raped. I think you made that up. I mean, it's really...
Really?
Woo, I just got emotional. Oh, my God.
I'm sorry.
Blah. It's hard. It's hard. It's really hard. Because we as women, we don't want to open our eyes to what's happening sometimes because it's overwhelming.
Katherine thinks all women should work together to force change.
All right, let's go.
The problems she points to are ones that have affected her.
Sorry.
Equal pay and sexual violence.
Welcome to the third Women's March Dry Run. Ah!
Intersectionality argues that her view as a white woman means that she doesn't see the problems that other women face. Katherine doesn't buy that.
It's overly politically correct. Your speech is inhibited by this concept that any word you say may offend somebody. If we're going to continue to nitpick and nitpick and nitpick and nitpick, we will never advance as a society. The left has to stop eating itself.
And so do you think these debates within the women's movement is just natural for any political movement?
Yeah, absolutely. Historically, when men are running the movement, civil rights movement is a great example, people don't look at it as infighting. When women are doing it, we have this stereotype, see, there's infighting. No, we just have different leaders. That's okay. You can have, this is a major movement.
Come out and stand for Jewish communities, stand against anti-Semitism, because I'm going to be there standing against it for you.
Sometimes it's clear Katherine isn't fluent in the language of the activist left. But we talked about intersectionality with a member of Katherine's board at an event to reach out to the Jewish community.
Have you had conversations with your feminist friends who are white where you're like, you don't understand, it's like sexism affects me differently as a biracial woman?
So this is interesting. It's opening Pandora's box, but I think part of the issue is privilege. And I think that's even what's happened between people of Jewish faith and African American or women of color. Sometimes I think people of Jewish faith put themselves in the same boat of people with color, and people of color don't see it that way.
High five to you, woman power. Yeah.
When we talked to marchers, most were aware of the debate over intersectionality, but it didn't dampen their enthusiasm to march in freezing weather.
I think we're all getting woke, is the term.
Did you ever feel like there was way more to these issues than you had realized, and then like you didn't want to?
These issues are deep. I mean, I have a very narrow, shallow understanding of a lot of these women's issues.
We have 200,000 marchers! 200,000!
Katherine doesn't think she'll do the march next year, or at least not this March. Instead, she hopes to align the event with International Women's Day. It'll be warmer and less political.
It just brings everything down a notch. So it says, look, like you're walking for breast cancer, you're walking for women's rights, and people can get on board with that. I think right now it's like very tied to Trump. We want to break that tie.
Given all the controversy, I might have expected you to say like, oh, we're going to focus more on pulling in women of color, but actually you're going to focus more on getting women in the heartland.
Well, okay, so it's not just women. It's not just women of color. We need all women, period. We have to stand together as American women.